I remember who I was before I learned to hide, before the world grew louder, before I stepped aside. There was a light inside me I never had to find. It lived in every moment. It never asked me why. We grow without permission. We change without a sound, becoming someone different while standing on the same ground. I loved without a reason. I dreamed without a plan. I thought that life would wait for me. I thought I'd understand. But time moves like a whisper. It slips between our hands and leaves us in the quiet as strangers to our plans. Still I am here breathing. Still I am alive. Still there is a future. Still there is a life. And in this silent hour, I finally see it clear. I was never lost, I was always here. I still remember the way you looked at me, as if time had stopped, as if nothing else existed but the space between our breathing. There was something quiet in your eyes, something I could never explain, a kind of peace I had never known, a kind of warmth without a name. We did not know where life would take us. We did not ask or try to see. We only lived inside the moment, you beside me and me beside thee. There were nights we stayed awake for hours, speaking of who we might become, of distant cities, distant futures, of all the places we would run. And I believed in every word you said, not because I knew they were true, but because I loved the way you dreamed and the way your dreams held you. Time moved slowly then, or maybe it was just us walking gently through the hours without fear of what they would become. But nothing made to live inside a moment can ever truly stay. The world keeps turning without asking and carries us away. Still I feel you in the silence. close my eyes and hear you breathing as if you never went away. There is a light you left inside me. It has never faded, never died. It lives in every quiet moment. It lives in me tonight. And though our paths have separated them, though we had to say goodbye, a part of you will always walk with me. A part of you will never die. Because love does not belong to time. It does not end. It does not leave. It changes form. It changes shape. But it never stops being. There was a time we believed that life would open every door, that every dream we ever whispered was waiting just beyond the shore. We spoke about the years ahead as if they already belonged to us, as if nothing in this fragile world could ever turn to dust. We walked through streets at night with nowhere we had to be, just you beside me breathing, just you beside me. The future lived inside our voices, in every word we chose to say. We built entire worlds together that vanished with the day. I remember how you held my hand as if it was the only truth, as if we had discovered something no one else had known in youth. And maybe in that fleeting moment we really had. Maybe love is not forever, but forever is what we had. Time did not ask for our permission. It did not wait for us to see that every second slowly changes who you are and who I'll be. We became strangers to our younger selves without even knowing when. We crossed the quiet line between who we were and who we've been. Still I carry every memory like pages I cannot erase. Every laugh and every silence, every shadow of your face. There are dreams we never followed. There are words we never said. There are versions of our life together that exist only in my head. But I do not regret the ending. I do not wish it was undone, because loving you has shaped me into who I have become. And somewhere in another lifetime, or somewhere beyond this place, maybe we are still together, untouched by time and space. Until then I will remember with sadness, not with pain, but with quiet understanding. That nothing true is lived in vain. Sometimes I wonder where you are tonight. If you are sleeping or staring at the ceiling like I am. If there are thoughts you cannot name, feelings you cannot explain, moments that still belong to us. We were never meant to be forever, and somehow we both knew it then. But knowing never made it easier. Knowing never taught us when. There were things we never said out loud, because saying them would make them real. And reality was never some fun. We were ready yet to feel. So we stayed inside the fragile space between holding on and letting go, between loving without certainty and fearing what we did not know. I remember the way your voice softened when you spoke my name at night, as if it carried something sacred, as if it carried light. There was a world inside your presence, a quiet place where I could rest, a version of myself beside you that I somehow love the best. But nothing living stays untouched, nothing breathing stays the same. We are shaped by silent forces, we are changed without a name. And slowly, almost without warning, we began to drift apart. Not in anger, not in failure, but in the quiet of the heart. Still there are nights I feel you near me, in the stillness of the air, in the gentle weight of memory, in the absence everywhere. I do not wish to change the ending, I do not wish to rewrite time, because loving you has taught me how to lose and still survive. And maybe somewhere far beyond this life, beyond what we can understand, there is a version of forever where we to leave, well, we stayed inside that moment and never had to grieve. Until then, you live inside me, not as pain and not as loss, but as proof that I was capable of loving at that cost. And that is something time cannot erase, something distance cannot take. You are part of who I am now, in every breath I make. It was a quiet night like any other. Nothing seemed to warn us what would change. The world was breathing softly around us. Everything and nothing felt the same. You sat across from me in silence, your eyes somewhere I could not reach, as if you were already leaving, as if goodbye had learned to speak. There was no anger in the moment, no sudden breaking, no loud end, just the fragile understanding that we could not pretend. We had loved in the only way we knew how, with open hands and open hearts, never thinking we would one day learn the quiet art of falling apart. I remember every second of that evening, how the air felt heavier than before, how time moved slower in your presence, standing at an invisible door. We did not say the words directly, we did not need to say them then, because something deeper than language told us how the story ends. And in that space between us breathing, I felt both lost and something new, a strange and painful kind of freedom, and finally seeing what was true. Love does not always mean staying, love does not always mean forever. Sometimes love becomes the courage to release each other. I wanted to hold on to the moment, to freeze it before it disappeared. But life does not belong to wanting, life does not follow what we fear. So we sat inside the ending, without trying to escape, without trying to hold together what time would reshape. When you finally stood to leave me, nothing shattered, nothing broke, just the quiet understanding in the words we never spoke. After you were gone, the silence stayed, filling every corner of the room. But inside that silence lived a truth, and inside the truth a fragile bloom. because loving you had changed me in ways I could not yet see. It taught me how to lose without losing the deepest parts of me. And though that night became a memory, and though we went our separate ways, I carry something gentle from it that lives in me always. Not the pain, not the ending, not the emptiness or fear, but the proof that I was capable of holding someone dear. And sometimes in the quiet darkness, when the world has fallen still, I thank the night we let go and the love I carry still. There are versions of us that still exist somewhere, in moments time no longer touches, in memories floating in the air. There is a version of me beside you, laughing like nothing could end, believing the world was still open, believing love would always bend. We lived inside those fragile hours without knowing what they were, without seeing how quickly the edges start to blur. I remember the sound of your breathing when everything else was quiet, when the world felt smaller and safer, when we did not need to fight it. We were not afraid of tomorrow, we were not afraid of change. We thought the future would wait for us, we thought it would remain. Our life moves in invisible directions, pulling us without a sound, changing what we thought was certain, shifting every solid ground. We became people we never imagined, carrying stories we did not choose, learning slowly, painfully, what it means to lose. Still I do not mourn who we were, I do not wish to return, because every version we lived through gave us something to learn. You are part of my becoming, part of the person I am now. Even if we walk in different worlds, even if we don't know how, sometimes I see your shadow in strangers, in the way they turn or stand, in the quiet familiarity of something I still understand. And in those moments I feel grateful, not for what remained but what was real, for the way your presence shaped me, for everything I still feel. Nothing beautiful is ever wasted, nothing true is ever gone. It lives inside us quietly and carries us along. We are made of every moment, every love and every goodbye, every version of ourselves that we left behind. And somewhere in the endless distance, beyond what we can see or touch, all the versions of us still exist, still loving just as There is a quiet life inside me that no one else can see, a world that lives between my thoughts, a softer version of me. It does not ask for recognition, it does not need to be known. It lives inside an understanding, it lives when I am alone. I have spent so much time becoming someone I thought I should be, someone stronger, someone fearless, someone the world could see. But somewhere in that endless trying, I forgot the truth I knew, that I was never meant to be perfect, only meant to be true. There were days I felt invisible, as if I did not belong, as if the space I occupied was somehow always wrong. I carried fears I could not explain, questions without reply, searching for meaning in every direction, searching for reasons why. But life does not reveal itself in answers, it reveals itself in time, in moments we do not expect, in quiet truths we find. I began to see the beauty in simply being here, in breathing through the uncertainty instead of living in fear. Not every path must lead somewhere, not every dream must come true. Sometimes the purpose of living is simply becoming you. There's a quiet strength in surviving, in waking up each day, in continuing forward gently, even when you lose your way. And now when I sit in the silence, I do not feel incomplete. I feel the quiet life inside me, and finally I feel at peace. Nothing more is required of me, nothing more must be done. I am already becoming everything I was meant to become. And in this fragile existence, this brief and beautiful time, I have learned that simply being alive is the most sacred thing to find. There was a time when everything felt open, when the future had no end, when every road was still unchosen, when every stranger was a friend. We walked without fear, because we did not know we could. We believed in endless tomorrows. We believed that life was good. There was a freedom in not knowing, a kind of innocence in being alive. We did not measure time in endings. We did not know what would survive. I remember how the air felt different, how the world seemed larger then, how every moment held a promise of who we might have been. We did not see the quiet changes happening beneath our skin. We did not feel the slow becoming of the people you would be within. Time moved gently through our fingers without asking us to see that nothing stays untouched forever, not even you and me. And slowly, almost without warning, we became someone new, carrying pieces of each other in everything we do. There are things I wish I could return to, not to stay but just to see person now I was beside you, and the person you were beside me. Not because I regret the distance, not because I regret goodbye, but because there was something sacred in that version of you and I. We were infinite in our believing, in our loving, in our dreams. We did not know how fragile forever really seems. And though that time no longer holds us, though it leaves beyond our reach, it left something inside my soul, something time could never teach. A quiet understanding of living, a gentle acceptance of change, and knowing that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost to age, because we carry every version of every life we live, and somewhere inside that memory we are still infinite. The library is almost empty now. The night has taken everyone. Only the quiet and I remain, and the work that is not yet done. There is something sacred in this hour, something fragile in the air, as if the world has paused its breathing, as if nothing else is there. I sit beneath the fading light, watching shadows slowly move, feeling time around me passing, with nothing left to prove. There were years I spent in searching for a place where I belong, for a meaning I could hold on to, for a truth that would stay strong. I thought I would find it somewhere distant, in a life not begun, but it was always here beside me, in the person I've become. Every love and every ending, every fear and every fall, built the quiet understanding that I needed through it all. There are things I will never return to, places lost somewhere in time, versions of myself I remember but can no longer find. And still I do not feel their absence, not as emptiness or pain, but as echoes of a life once lived that will never live again. The last light flickers softly, like a memory fading slow, reminding me that nothing living was ever meant to stay or go. It was only meant to happen, only meant to pass me through, leaving traces in the silence, leaving something real and true. I close my eyes and breathe the moment, let it settle in my chest, feeling neither lost nor longing, only stillness, only rest. Because life was never something I was meant to understand, only something I was given, only something I could stand in. And now inside this quiet ending, I feel something I could not be before, not the need for something greater, not the need for something more, only gratitude for breathing, only peace in being here, only love for all the versions that have slowly disappeared. The last light fades into darkness, but I am not afraid to see that everything I thought I needed was already inside me. It is the hour before the morning, when the night still holds the sky, when everything feels suspended between the living and goodbye. The world has not yet found its voice, the noise has not returned. There is only breath and stillness, and everything I've learned. I sit with thoughts that never leave me, but no longer ask me why. They rest beside me like old stories I have already lived inside. There was a time I feared the silence, feared what it might reveal, the truths I could not hide from, the things I could not heal. I filled my life with constant motion, with distraction and with sound, hoping I could outrun the questions I was never meant to drown. But silence is not empty, silence is where truth begins. It is where we meet ourselves beneath the noise we live within. I see now how life was never waiting for me to become someone new. It was always happening quietly in everything I went through, in every love that did not last, in every dream that changed its form, in every night I felt completely lost, and every quiet morning reborn. Nothing was wasted in the living, nothing was lived in vain. Every moment shaped the person standing here again. I do not need to know the future, I do not need to understand. I only need to stay present inside this fragile space. The sky begins to shift its color, the darkness slowly turns to blue, and I feel something like forgiveness for everything I let through. Not forgiveness for mistakes or endings, not forgiveness for what was lost, but forgiveness for believing I was ever truly lost, because I was always here becoming, always moving toward this place where I could sit inside the silence and finally feel a grace. Soon the world will wake around me, soon the noise will start again. But for now I have this moment and the peace that lives within. There are nights when memory turns without asking to be seen, when the past moves quietly beside me, like it has always been. Not as pain and not as longing, but as something soft and true, a reminder of the person I once was beside you. We lived inside a fragile moment, never knowing it would end. thinking time would carry us to where we could not pretend. There were words we never finished. There are dreams we left behind, but they still exist somewhere in the quiet of my mind. I do not wish to change what happened. I do not wish to turn around, because every step that led me here was something I was meant to find. You are not gone, not completely. You live in who I am today, in the way I see the world now, in the quiet way I stay. Sometimes I hear your voice in silence, in the space between my breath, not as something I am losing, but as something I have left. Love does not disappear in absence. It does not fade into the air. It becomes a part of living. It becomes a way we care. There was beauty in our becoming, even if it could not last, even if we had to leave it, even if it lives in the past. Nothing true is ever wasted. Nothing real is ever gone. It continues in the person we are slowly becoming on. I carry every moment with me, not as weight but as a light, guiding me through silent mornings and the stillness of the night. And though our lives have moved in different ways, though time has drawn its line, all that we were still remains somewhere inside. There was a time my heart was restless, always reaching for something more, always searching distant horizons, never standing where I stood before. I believed that peace was somewhere else, somewhere far beyond my reach, hidden in a different life, or something I could learn to teach. I ran through days without arriving, chased reflections in the glass, trying to become a future while abandoning my past. There were nights I could not sleep, thoughts moving endlessly, questions without any answers about who I was meant to be. I thought becoming meant escaping, meant leaving who I was behind, meant finding some new version that would finally feel aligned. But life does not exist in distance. Life exists in where we stand, in the fragile present moment, moving softly through our hands. I began to feel the quiet changes, not outside but deep within, not a sudden transformation, but a gentle settling in. The need to run became less urgent, the need to know began to fade, and in the space where fear had lived before, something peaceful had been made. I saw the beauty in the ordinary, in breath and silence and being here, in the simple act of living without needing everything clear. Nothing was missing from this moment, nothing needed to be found. I was already where I needed, already standing on that ground. There is a place my heart has reached now, not a place that time can move, not a place that can be taken, not a place I have to prove. It lives inside my quiet breathing, inside the stillness I have grown, inside the person I have become, inside the peace I now have known. And though the world keeps turning forward, and though life will always change, I carry this quiet place within me, and I will never feel strange, because peace was never somewhere distant, never waiting far away. It was always here inside me, learning slowly how to stay. There was a love that lived inside me, long before I knew its name. It moved through every quiet moment and left me never quite the same. It was not loud or overflowing, it did not ask the world to see. It lived in small and silent places between you and me. I did not know how much it shaped me, while it was still alive and near. I only felt its quiet presence. I only knew it was here. We spoke in ways beyond our language, in glances no one else could read, in the fragile understanding of what hearts silently need. There were no promises between us, no forever we could claim, only the fragile truth of living and loving just the same. Time moved forward without asking, without caring what we knew, and slowly life began to lead us towards something neither of us chose to do. I remember the moment everything changed, not as something sharp or clear, but as a quiet shift in breathing, as a distant kind of fear. Not fear of losing what we had, but fear of seeing it become something we could not protect anymore, something we could not outrun. And still we stayed inside the moment, as long as time allowed us to, holding on to something fragile, holding on to something true. When it ended, nothing shattered, nothing broke apart in sound. Only silence grew between us, only absence gathered round. But love does not end in ending, it does not disappear in space. It becomes a quiet presence time can never quite erase. It lives in how I see the world now, and how I stand and how I breathe, in the quiet strength of knowing, in the quiet strength to leave. You are part of my becoming, part of who I came to be, not as someone I have lost now, but as someone who lives in me. And though your voice is now a memory, and though your hand is no longer mine, there is a love that shaped my silence, that will outlive the end of time. Because love was never meant to last forever, it was meant to make us real, meant to open something fragile, meant to teach us how to feel. And in the quiet life that follows, in the person I became, I carry the love that shaped my silence, and I will never be the same. Somewhere between then and now, I became someone new. Not all at once, not in a moment, but slowly without knowing I was moving through. There was no single turning point, no clear dividing line, just quiet days that changed me, one breath at a time. I remember who I used to be, how everything felt unknown, how I carried every question like something I had to own. I believed I had to find myself, as if I had been lost somewhere, as if I had disappeared completely into the empty air. But I was never truly missing, I was only becoming real, learning what it meant to carry everything I had to feel. There were nights I felt so fragile, as if I might disappear, as if nothing in this endless world could hold or keep me here. Still I woke up every morning, still I learned to stand again, still I kept on moving forward through the quiet and the pain. Time does not ask who we were before it, it only moves us where we need to be. It does not wait for understanding, it simply lets us see. I began to notice small things, things I never saw before. The way light rests upon a surface, the way silence holds so much more. There is a peace in not knowing, there is freedom in letting go, there is strength in simply breathing and allowing life to flow. I do not need to return to who I was, I do not need to become someone else. I am already standing here inside this fragile self. Somewhere between the past and present, between memory and now, I became someone I recognize, even if I don't know how. And in this quiet understanding, in this life I have somehow found, I no longer fear the distance. Between then and now. There was a version of my life where you were still beside me, where every morning carried the quiet certainty of we. I did not know how much of me was shaped by your presence then. I only knew the world felt different when you were near, and when we lived inside a fragile rhythm, we never tried to understand. understand. We simply move together without needing a plan. You were part of every silence, part of every breath I took, part of every quiet moment, in every place I looked. I thought that life would keep us there in that unbroken space. I thought that love could hold us still beyond all time and place. But life moves in directions we cannot always see, and slowly, almost gently, you became a memory. Not all at once, not in a moment, not in something sharp or loud, but in the quiet separation of standing in a different crowd. There were nights I did not recognize myself, standing alone without your voice, wondering who I was becoming without that familiar choice. I had to learn to live in silence without reaching for your hand. Had to learn to face the future without what I had planned. It was not strength that carried me, it was simply time and breath. It was waking up each morning and surviving what was left. And somewhere in that endless distance between who I was and who I am now, I became someone unfamiliar, someone I did not know how. But slowly, gently, without warning, something peaceful grew in me. Not the absence of your memory, but the strength to simply be. You did not disappear completely. You live in everything I've learned, in every quiet understanding, in every truth I've earned. And though you are no longer with me, though our lives have moved apart, you helped create the person who now stands inside my heart. I am not the same without you, and I was never meant to be. I am someone new because of you, and someone new because of me. And in this quiet life I carry now, in this fragile space I see, I honor the person I became and the love that shaped me. was not a moment anyone would notice. Nothing extraordinary in the air. The night was quiet as always, and I was simply there. There was no sudden revelation, no voice that spoke my name, no dramatic shift in breathing, no fire, no sudden flame. And yet something had changed within me, something I could finally feel. Not something new or foreign, but something deeply real. For so long I had been searching for a place where I could rest, for a version of myself that I could finally accept. I thought peace was something distant, something I would have to find, hidden somewhere in the future, waiting somewhere in time. I did not know it was already here, not outside but in me, waiting for the moment I would finally see. I stopped asking questions, I stopped needing to know why. I stopped fearing the silence, I stopped fearing goodbye. I allowed the moment to exist without trying to hold it still, without trying to control what never bends to will. And in that quiet surrender, something softened in my chest. Not the end of every sadness, but the end of my unrest. I felt the weight of all my living and the strength it gave to me. I felt the truth of every ending and the truth of simply being. Nothing was missing from that moment, nothing needed to be changed. I was exactly where I stood, no longer feeling estranged. The night did not become brighter, the world did not transform, but inside the quiet of my breathing I was finally warm. I understood without speaking, I accepted without fear that life was never something to solve, only something to be here. And though tomorrow would still come with all it brings and takes away, I knew I would carry this quiet peace into every fragile day, because peace was never something waiting. It was never far from me. It was always in the stillness where I allowed myself to be. The morning came without asking me, without warning or sound. Light slowly filled the empty spaces where darkness had been found. I had spent so many nights before it, afraid of what I could not see, afraid of all the silent questions waiting inside of me. I feared the weight of being alone, the distance of what had been, the quiet truth that life keeps moving no matter where you've been. There were versions of myself I missed, versions I could not return to, people I had been beside once, lives I had already lived through. I carried them like fragile pages inside a book I could not close, every memory still breathing, every ending that I chose. I thought I needed resolution, I thought I needed to understand how to make sense of every moment, how to hold it in my hands. But life was never asking that of me. Life was never something to solve, it was only something to walk through, something to dissolve. The light continued growing stronger, touching everything it found, and I felt something shift inside me without making a sound. Not the disappearance of sadness, not the absence of regret, but the gentle, quiet knowing that I could live with it. I did not need to escape my past, I did not need to rewrite time, I only needed to accept this fragile life as mine. I breathed in the morning silence, and for the first time in so long, I did not feel like I was waiting, I did not feel like I was wrong. I was simply here existing, inside this moment, inside this day, no longer running from the future, no longer needing yesterday. And in that quiet understanding, as the light reached through to me, I realized I was no longer afraid of who I had become to be. The morning did not promise anything, it did not tell me where to go, but it gave me something greater, the strength to simply grow. And I stepped forward into living without needing certainty, carrying nothing but my breathing and the quiet trust in me. There was always one last page. I never found the words to write. One last truth I could not hold. One last moment in the night. carried it through silent years, through every place I went alone, through every version of myself. I slowly came to know it was not something I could see, not something I could name, only the feeling something lived just beyond what I became. I thought that time would give it meaning, thought that distance would reveal the hidden shape of every ending, the hidden truth I could not feel. But time does not explain our stories, it does not show us what they mean. It only leaves us with the living and everything we have been. There were words I never spoke to you, words that stayed inside my chest, not because I did not feel them, but because silence felt like rest. Not every truth needs to be heard, not every ending needs a sound. Some things exist more honestly and never being found. I used to fear the unfinished places, the parts of life I could not close, the quiet spaces left behind, the questions no one knows. But now I see their quiet beauty, their fragile and imperfect grace. They are the proof of something living no time could fully erase. We are not meant to understand everything, not meant to hold it all in place. We are only meant to carry what time cannot replace. The last page was never empty, it was never left behind. It was simply still becoming inside the quiet of my mind. And maybe there is no final ending, no single truth to finally see, only the endless gentle turning of who we are allowed to be. I do not need to write the ending, I do not need to make it clear. I only need to keep on living while I am still here. And somewhere in that quiet living, in the breath I take tonight, the last page is already written in the simple act of life. After everything had ended, after every word was gone, there was a silence left behind that I was standing on. Not empty like I feared would be, not cold and not severe, but something soft and patient, something quietly here. At first I tried to fill it with noise and with escape, with anything that could protect me from the shape it chose to take. I thought silence meant losing, meant absence, meant the end, meant standing in a world that would no longer bend. But slowly I began to listen to what silence really was. Not the absence of something living, but the presence of what once was. It carried every memory gently, without asking me to stay, without asking me to return to what had passed away. It did not ask me questions, did not demand I'd understand. It only stayed beside me, like an unseen hand. I realized I was not broken, I was only being changed, reshaped by something deeper, not lost but rearranged. There were parts of me still healing, parts still learning how to be, parts still standing in the distance between who I was and me. And silence gave them space to breathe, space to slowly grow, without forcing any answers, without needing me to know. It taught me how to stay present, how to stand without fear, how to live inside the moment while I was still here. I no longer feared the quiet, no longer feared the night, because silence was not darkness, it was a different kind of light. It showed me who I was becoming without needing words or sound. It showed me peace was never missing, only waiting to be found. And now when everything is quiet, when the world has stepped away, I feel the silence beside me, and I know it chose to stay. Not as something I must escape, not as something I must survive, but as proof that I am still here and still alive. There were nights I thought the light was gone, that something in me had disappeared, that I had lost the part of myself that once felt strong I moved through days without feeling present, through moments that did not feel mine, as if I was only watching my life from somewhere outside of time. I tried to remember who I had been before the world began to change, before I learned how fragile we are, before I felt estranged. There were dreams I could no longer see, futures I could not imagine, and I wondered if something essential in me had quietly been abandoned. But even in the deepest darkness, even in the quiet despair, there was something still breathing, something still there. Not loud enough for me to notice, not strong enough to clearly see, but present in the quiet persistence of simply continuing to be. The light was never something external, never something I could lose. It lived in every fragile moment, in every path I did not choose. It lived in every breath I carried, every morning I survived, every time I kept on moving, every time I stayed alive. I began to feel it slowly, not as something new or strange, but as something always with me, unchanged beneath the change. It was there in silent acceptance, in letting go of who I was before, in understanding I was never broken, only something more. The light did not need to return to me, because it had never gone away. It had only waited in the silence for me to see it stay. And now when the night grows heavy and doubt begins to speak again, I remember there is something in me that remains beyond the pain. Not untouched, not unchanged, but still alive.